very famous actor and movie star that I'm sure you've all heard of. It's me, Sky Liam Patterson. You have heard of me, right? Yeah? No? Well, maybe you have, and if you haven't, I'm going to introduce myself a little bit more. I am originally from Portland, Oregon, but I've been in Los Angeles, California for quite a few years now at this point. I've acted in feature films, international projects, a few television projects as well. And really, I have always loved acting since I was very little, doing stage plays, of course, in school, putting on my own performances, and I got much more involved in filmmaking when I got a little bit older, into my teens. In high school, I had an internship with the Wieden & Kennedy advertising agency, and this was in Portland, Oregon, so I was able to do student films, learning about how to cut, edit, and also perform for the camera with them. And then I went to USC originally for film school. And I was in that program for about a year when I decided I wanted to change majors. And I ended up majoring in Mandarin Chinese. And the reason for that was because I was very, very involved in martial arts. But I didn't understand that later on I'd be able to bring all those interests together. First by doing films in China. I did a movie that in Chinese is called Tai Chi, but in America it was released as Tai Chi Zero. And that was, at that time, it was a pretty big film. And classic Hollywood story where my biggest scenes ended up being cut out of the film. But I also did another one in China called Ba Gua Zong Shi, which was released as the Kung Fu Master. And that was a lot of fun, where I got to do all kinds of different things. First, for me, dialogue scenes, action scenes, different wardrobes, all these kinds of things. So I was able to get that experience there in China doing movie making, while I was also competing as an athlete doing different martial arts tournaments. And when I came back to Los Angeles, I was also competing for a few years in the martial arts, but then I got much more involved in acting, doing improv performances with that, doing scene study every week, twice a week, 5-hour classes, and getting involved in a few first television projects, music videos in Los Angeles, and then working my way up to being able to do some feature films. I was in a motion picture called The Amityville Murders, which was a really, really great experience. It's based on the true story of what really happened behind the scenes of the famous film The Amityville Horror, which some of us may have heard of. A lot of fun working with the great cast and crew, and I was fortunate enough to be able to work with some of those crew members again on a few different films. We actually shot a movie July of 2020 during the pandemic, one of the first SAG-approved feature films that got started shooting again. I think it was one of the first 3 that was shooting again in Los Angeles, adhering to all these new COVID standards of safety that were a lot different than how most of us were used to running a set, but the experience still was really great. And I think we made a very exciting film called American Boogeyman, and that's coming out this year, July of 2021. So I think everybody here has been adjusting to what production is going to be like post-pandemic, and thankfully we've been able to get that under control to an extent, and so set life still has a lot of precautions, but things are starting to feel a little bit looser, a little bit more natural again. One of my great passions, aside from acting, is also writing. And over the last couple years, that's something I've been able to explore a lot more. I did a short film for Marriott Hotels. They had a 48-hour film challenge, which, if you've never heard of one of those, is a contest where you have 48 hours to write, cast, direct and film, and edit a short film. Not only do you have to do all these things, but typically every contest is going to impose a few limitations and specific criteria that they're going to want you to fulfill as well. And so this contest happened to be sponsored by Marriott Hotels, and they had just opened up a brand new resort in Florida that they wanted us to come and shoot a short film on. Actually, there were 4 groups shooting these short films. So we had to fly to Florida, stay in this 5-star resort, which was, believe me, it was very, very difficult. And we shot our short film on location, including a few different criteria, such as the names of one of their services, shooting at a few different locations in the hotel, and incorporating a few different elements from their brand. And I was not actually the star of this film. I was the writer, which was a really great opportunity for me, because anytime you have someone else that's going to give you an opportunity to shoot a film, and they're going to pay for it and provide all the different equipment and services you need, this is what everyone is ultimately asking for in the motion picture industry. So I was able to write this film. We had about, I would say, 5 or 6 hours to get the script locked. And we had local actors that we brought in, and we cast them. And then we filmed all through the night, and we edited, and we reshot, and it was quite an experience. But it was very, very satisfying to see this crew coming together and working super hard to put this vision onto the screen through collaboration. And it started with the words that I was able to put on the page. And that was received very well at that festival. We won a few awards. And then more recently, actually just last week, I was able to write another script and shoot another short film. And this was, once again, a very unique opportunity. This was another film competition, and it's affiliated with an international Buddhist organization. So they have films in Chinese, and they also have film submissions in English. Our film was in English, but the theme of this competition, they call it 三好微电影比赛. What that means is like 3 good deeds short film contest. And 三好, the 3 good deeds are 是存好心, 说好事, 做好事. What this means, hold on, I'm going to say that again. So the theme of the competition, they call it 三好 because there are 3 good deeds. Those are 做. The theme of this competition is the 三好, which means 3 good deeds. And those are 做好事, 说好话, and 存好心. Now what that means is to do good deeds, speak good words, and think good thoughts. So this is the overarching theme of this competition, but what's really great is that it's very flexible, and you can apply this to any concept. So when we looked at the locations that we might be able to shoot at, we found out that one of the large Buddhist temples in Los Angeles also has an indoor basketball court that's very new and very nice. And we were able to shoot at that court. And it was very exciting because when you have a location like that that's unique, you can come up with a story idea from that location. So I was tasked once again with writing the script for this. And the story I came up with was actually about competition in the workplace. And as a matter of fact, the setting was an advertising agency. So not that I was personally involved with a lot of competition back when I was able to do student films in conjunction with Wieden & Kennedy Advertising Agency. But I got the lay of the land of kind of how things are organized there. And this advertising agency, being a very big one, they actually had a basketball court in their basement. So I said, what if this basketball court we have is a representative of something at a large advertising agency, and there's a guy who always wants to play there every day, and one of his coworkers, who's very bright and very positive, wants to play, and he's excluding her, not because of her ideas or her lack of any particular quality, but because of his own sense of competition and the feeling that he needs to do it on his own. Competition in the workplace and that kind of grinder mentality, I think, is a big problem for people who are trying to do everything themselves, and they're really shutting down. So we were able to take this unique location and write a short film about that, but in the end, you see what the solution is when people work together and they do these 3 good deeds. And so we were able to collaborate. I wrote the script. I was also able to act in that film. and I think we produced something that's very exciting and very special. I'm hoping it does well at the competition, but regardless, when somebody else sends you a call sheet, which is the schedule for the day's shooting, and it has your name on it as the writer, and they've all done this in collaboration with you for your project, it's a really special feeling. So it was a totally unforgettable experience, and I can't wait to see how the finished product does, and I can't wait to see what is going to happen next in that arena, and what other opportunities I'm going to have, not only with acting, but also with writing. Hi everybody, let's see what we have here going on. When I was a kid, actually, I loved playing drums, and I used to put on some of my favorite albums, and I had all these coffee cans, and I'd put different things in them, like for the snare I'd put Legos, for the deeper drums I'd put fabric inside, and I would always play all these different songs, and I never had real drums, so it's kind of surreal now that someone invites me in here just to talk, just to exchange, you know, things that I've been working on and what I like to do. And then they asked me to come and play on this really nice drum set. It's stuff like that that you don't predict might happen. You don't anticipate how things are going to be connected. But, you know, when I came to Los Angeles, I moved from Portland, Oregon, where I was born, and I came for college. I came to study. I was studying film because I love movies. I wanted to understand how they're made, how to make my own movies, and how to make them better. And then I started studying Mandarin Chinese at the same time because I was doing Chinese martial arts, and I was very involved in that. And of course, I wanted to understand how to put the best martial arts on film, and incorporate not only elements of athletics and action and movement, but also how to surround that with a script with production value. And I was studying these two things, and I thought that it was kind of, in a way, you know, separate hobbies that I had. Okay, well, I'll do film, but then I'm going to compete in martial arts, and then I'm going to study Mandarin, and all three things kind of combined for me. They all merged. I went to China and I was learning Mandarin there, but then I was also competing in martial arts tournaments, wushu. And then I also started filming movies over there. And I started with kung fu movies, but then when I came back to the United States, and I was able to use my Mandarin to connect with many different people, then I started doing different types of Chinese movies, TV shows, and even live events here. And now I get invited to play drums, which is something from so many years ago in my childhood that I almost forgot about. And I just sit down and just really am goofing off, but it feels good. It's something about the movement that I like, movement and rhythm. And that's present in music, that's present in film, and it's definitely present in martial arts, especially the Chinese martial art of wushu. Because this is a competition-style martial art where all the focus is on you. You're not fighting another person. You are performing by yourself. And you're doing all kinds of different techniques and acrobatics, and sometimes you're using weapons. And so you have to have a sense of rhythm and flow, and when to go, and then sometimes you hit a cymbal and you stop on one movement. and that's going to hold the audience's attention. And I think that's what drew me to Chinese martial arts and the style of wushu at the beginning. It was basically, how much can you express yourself internally and externally in a way that's going to captivate an audience. And when I competed, one of my favorite events was weapons, and I used in Chinese it's called mu yang bian, which means in English we translate it as the bullwhip. You know, like Indiana Jones has a big whip that's going to crack and break the sound barrier and make these huge, loud, sonic booms. And the reason I liked that weapon was because no one else did it. And it was so surprising when I would get up on stage and people might be doing other things. You know, you have parents talking to their kids, and then you have judges preparing in another ring because there's going to be another event that's happening after mine. And then suddenly, when I begin slowly coiling the whip, getting it ready, building up the anticipation, and then the first crack, pah! I open up, everybody's heads in the audience, they turn and they look. I know they love to travel, and it's like one of their biggest passions, and they love to travel for travel's sake. And for me growing up, traveling was kind of a privilege, and it wasn't something that we did very often. So when I get the opportunity to travel now, it's always very exciting for me, and I don't take it for granted. But I usually travel for work, for some kind of engagement. I used to travel because I was studying. You know, studying abroad, traveling through China, different places. One time I stayed for 1 month in the province of Henan because there was a Shaolin Kung Fu school there. It's where the Shaolin Temple is. And so that was always for some type of a purpose. And then when I have traveled in the United States, mostly it's also been for all kinds of different work occasions. You know, you can never predict what type of opportunity you're going to be offered. So I actually ended up going first to Paris, France, and then to New York, and that was to shoot fitness videos. And we were shooting the videos in Mandarin, but there was for a very large international fitness company, and it was the first time they had done them in Mandarin. I think they might have done videos in Spanish before, but they wanted to continue to expand to different markets and sell fitness equipment in different countries. So normally their primary market is English speaking, but we were the first ones to try these Mandarin videos. And so we're running all around the famous landmarks of Paris, the Eiffel Tower, the River Seine, you know, the left bank and all these things, and the Notre Dame. It was actually right before the fire there. We were there about 2 or 3 days before that. And so not only are we running and doing exercises out in the streets, but we're speaking Mandarin, or at least I am, because the crew also did not speak Mandarin. It was myself and another actress who was also doing videos. And I'll never forget, it was my first day. I was feeling pretty green. I wasn't totally familiar with the format they were doing, but I had to learn very quickly. And I was shooting a few different workouts. I think they were kind of going okay, but we ended in front of the Pantheon, which is this big classical structure in Paris, and it's where a lot of very notable figures are buried, including Marie Curie, to name one. And so we're running all through the city, right, and I'm speaking to the camera as I'm running, as I'm doing different types of exercise programs. And we finished in front of the Pantheon, and I'm leading circuit training. So it's a variety of different types of exercises. And I'm doing push-ups, I'm doing jumping jacks, and then I didn't realize what was going on. But behind me, all these students, I think they were on a field trip, and they were French students, they're all gathering, and they start to imitate all the movements I'm doing. The streets of Paris in front of the Pantheon, and I'm doing all these jumping jacks, and behind me all these French students, high school students, are gathered around me. This is unbeknownst to me because I don't want to look behind me and check while I'm doing it, but they're all following along with all the movements that I do. And it made for this really, really great moment in the video. And at the end, I was kind of talking to the audience, and I said, yeah, great, you did a great job, we believe in you, and all of Paris believes in you. And I start clapping, and then everybody behind me starts clapping. And these are the moments that can be very fortuitous, and you don't predict them. There are things that you can't plan for necessarily, but when they happen, you want to really take advantage of them, capture the moment, and that can be whether you're filming a video or a movie or anything, right? When you're meeting somebody new, when you're writing or creating some other type of artwork, when the right people come together and you're collaborating, or even just one-on-one and you meet someone that is very special. You kind of want to go with that and see where that leads and not try to block it. And what's really fascinating is just how, people all over the world, they want to communicate. They want to come together. I mean, when I was in France, most of the people that I met didn't really speak English. And some of the people did, at like our hotel and things like that. But on the streets or in a small bakery or something like that, a lot of people didn't speak very much English. But there was always kind of an understanding, a collaboration, and people want to come together. They want to find common ground. I see that a lot. Also working with Chinese projects, there's always common ground. That no matter what's going on, we can still collaborate, and we can have a lot of fun too, and we can make something really great. And we're also going to be making memories. So when you have an opportunity to go, to travel, I always like being able to do something there at the destination. And what was really fascinating too was seeing kind of just how the city of Paris was built up very differently than a city like Los Angeles was built up, because it was a totally different time period, different set of histories, different geography and climate. And you get a much different sense of kind of what's important, what's of value. In Paris, there's art everywhere. There's art in the subway stations. And there are lots of parks and public places for people to go. What was really fascinating was then to go from Paris directly to New York. And it was the first time I'd ever been in New York City. And it is an older city than Los Angeles. So you see that the architecture is not exactly similar. There's more Gothic architecture in New York, which is, similar in ways to Paris. You have buildings that can be very old, churches, and a lot of parks in New York too. Central Park, naturally, which is huge and a place for people from all over the city and really all over the world to come together and experience life outdoors in the public.
But we don't necessarily have that as much in Los Angeles, you know. I mean, yeah, there's small neighborhood parks and things like that, but these really large-scale kind of gathering places, it's something that's very special, and I think it's something that we don't place as much emphasis on in modern current society as perhaps was placed in a bygone era, you know, where you couldn't sit at home and watch TV or even listen to the radio or even necessarily read books on the scale that we have access to now. Of course, the internet as well. You know, what are you going to do? Well, you can go outside and you can look at the beauty of nature or art that people have crafted, and you can do it in public. You can do it with other people. And it's really interesting how we kind of have gotten back to that a little bit since the pandemic. When the pandemic started, I mean, at first, everyone was staying in. I was staying in. I wasn't really seeing anybody. Even the hiking trails in LA were closed for a period of time. But then we started meeting up, but outdoors. And so going to parks. And then, like, one of my favorite things to do became just meeting a friend in a park with some takeout and having lunch, socially distanced outdoors. That's something that, you know, we wouldn't have done before because we would have taken for granted just to go to a restaurant, and now we miss that too. But to really enjoy these public spaces and to share a bond, to build community through that, that's something that I think we can learn from other places and bring that to LA. And, you know, the weather's so great that we have that opportunity to do that all the time. And I think you never know when you're going to rediscover something that has been lost necessarily to our current discussion of culture. Keep going. Yeah. You know, there are concepts that kind of we've lost touch with as a society at large, and you can say that very globally in terms of, you know, this current generation that we're part of, or you can also say that locally too, depending on where you are. Certain places that have values that are of an older generation and values that might be more recent for other places where things are developing very rapidly and things are changing all the time. One of my favorite authors is Joseph Campbell, and he is, of course, the one who's brought into popular consciousness the idea of the hero's journey. And one thing that he says is that there are lots of these ideas and concepts that basically are sort of forgotten by our society in its current iteration. And so there are many, many ways to reconnect with these types of ideas. You can do them through stories, and you can do them through looking at the mountains of Utah or the giant Gothic architecture of Paris. Sometimes it's even just connecting with people on the street, you know, people of a different culture, different background, doing things that you wouldn't expect you'd do or that you normally wouldn't find yourself doing in that type of situation. Things that can just kind of bring you back to what's really important. I remember one time in Paris, and it was actually my last morning there. I was about to fly out, but I was just kind of enjoying this pastry, sitting outside of this large public square across from this big church. And there was a band, kind of like, I don't know if it was a high school band or they were busking basically, you know, just playing tunes together, and they had a lot of brass instruments. Young people, high school, college age perhaps, and they started playing the song "Eye of the Tiger," which happens to be one of my favorite songs, but it of course comes from a motion picture, which is Rocky III, a movie that influenced me a lot growing up and still does today in many ways. And that idea that this piece of music, which is very tied to a film, very tied to a particular story, can be heard and enjoyed now over 30 years after it was first created in a completely different part of the world with people who don't even speak the same language of origin of that piece of art. It was just kind of a special moment, kind of a transcendent moment for me when everything clicked just as to, you know, how powerful this storytelling can really be. And there are lots of moments when things like that happens, but they're all unique, and every time it happens it's very powerful and very special. And so one of the things that I really want to do is to create these stories, primarily through the medium of film, which will speak to very wide audiences, regardless of national origin, mother tongue, religion, political alignment, anything like that. I want to be able to make films that can speak to people on a deep human level. Black Panther did that. That's one of my favorite examples because that movie follows Joseph Campbell's hero's journey to a T. If you break it down, every single step on the journey is represented in that film. It's really an incredible work, and I think that's one of the main reasons why it translated so well all across the world. And of course, it had great actors, great special effects, great music, as a matter of fact, popular songs as well as the score. And it's a kind of a modern example that storytelling still works if we really get back to the core, back to the roots of what people feel, regardless of what their experiences are. What is the human experience? It's really possible to create something that is going to inspire people everywhere. And I think it's so powerful. And that's kind of a way to reconnect with those ideas of the past, those universal concepts in a public forum. And doing it in a private forum, obviously you can read, books that might speak to you, whether they're popular novels or whether they are, things that are more historical or of an older antiquity, like for instance, Joseph Campbell. But just getting out into nature is a very special experience. It can be a holy experience. For the same type of project that I was able to do in Paris and I did in New York, we also did a shoot in Utah, and going there and just seeing really the scale of nature there that has been relatively untouched compared to a city like Los Angeles, where you have pockets, but all around those pockets things are very built up and developed. In Utah, there are just these giant mountains that are really, you'll be in a city and you're completely surrounded by that. And they have structures to match that too in the big cities like Salt Lake, but then in the background you still see the accomplishments of man juxtaposed against what nature has seemingly effortlessly conjured out of our geography. And it gives you kind of a different type of energy just in your day-to-day life, because you're more connected to what is going on around us regardless of human foibles. I can only imagine what it would be like in another state like Montana or Wyoming, where you have all that, and it's probably even touched less by that development than a state like Utah, or at least the area where I was. And so, for me, when I travel, like I said, I enjoy having some type of a purpose there, or an opportunity to really go deeper. Of course, we all need relaxation. I don't want to sell that short. but for me personally, I guess I'm a little restless because I might relax for a very brief period of a day or two, but then I want kind of to seek something more, you know. I want to keep generating things on my own, whether I'm writing or whether I'm, you know, using my body and my voice to perform something and create a type of a truth there. But I always want to keep moving forward and digesting and creating something new, you know, forging ahead. So it's kind of hard for me to really sit still or just focus on nothing for a long extended period of time. You know, I always want to keep going. And I have so many ideas in my head. You know, I have like the short film that I just wrote. I have another one that I'm working on right now that how much time?
Continue.
How much more?
About 3 minutes.
Okay. I have another short film I'm working on right now that is a project actually for the city of Los Angeles through an arts grant program where they wanted to do something that, you know, is COVID safe, but showcasing the works of artists and what they've been able to accomplish during this pandemic, even during the lockdown. So I was selected for part of that program, and I'm writing this short film that's going to be part of an online gallery in just a few weeks. And then I have ideas for, you know, feature films that I'm also in the process of writing, and then one that I want to do after that, and the one that I want to do after that, and then when we have more money and a larger platform, the one that I want to do at that point. You know, there's so much possibility, and I think that is just what always keeps me going, you know, because you see what has been accomplished so far up to this point, and I think it's infinitesimal as to what can still be done by humanity, by large groups, and also just by one person. One person has that power to really affect change on a large scale. And you can do that by creating something, a work of art or an original story. Sometimes you don't understand how one person who's, you know, the person who cleans up your school, the person that cooks at your favorite hole-in-the-wall restaurant, or your teacher, you know, or your tutor, whatever the case may be, someone like that still has the potential to affect you on such a deep level, and that can create a chain of events that is going and driving you to push forward and then do something positive in your own life, and then maybe that affects other people. I mean, we're all linked together. It's not exactly kind of the theory of relativity on that scale for me to express that, but in all these countries and all these different levels of experience, regardless of whatever our personal histories are, we're all connected, and I think it's really exciting to find ways to strengthen that connection. Great time expounding upon these various ideas that are floating through my head. It was great spending time with AWTV, and I hope you enjoy the next program.